What is going on? What is going on? What is going on, everybody? It's Big Game James here. You know how we do. And I got a special guest. Nick, is it Herrera?
Herrera, yep.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I said it right. Okay, so now I started following Nick because he followed me. I started following Nick because you be going in on them good analysis. I said, you know what? And then when you mentioned that Jerry thing, I said, you know what? Nah, I ain't typing all this. We gonna get on. We're gonna come on live. We're gonna talk about all this right now. But hey, introduce yourself and let everybody know, what you do, what you got going, all that good stuff, and we'll jump in and talk some good Cowboys talk.
Yeah. Nick Herrera, live in Kansas City, so I'm actually in Chiefs Kingdom, but born and raised a Cowboys fan. Love following the Cowboys on Twitter. Definitely like the analytical aspect of how these teams are being built. And my big thing is take the emotions out of the game, figure out what's wrong, and let's try to fix it. So that's the way I try to approach, how we're doing.
I mean, honestly, that's the best way to really approach it, because when you're the emotional fan, if you had an emotional fan running things, I mean, you'll never get things done. Everything would be tore apart. And we all get it. A lot of people of us go on emotions and things of that nature. But when you're running a business, you can't be on your emotions. You have to think practical, and you have to think intellectually and logically, because emotional won't work. And emotional decisions tend to get you in trouble because they're spur of the moment type of thing. So
and we're all definitely, I get that.
Yeah, we feel me, but I definitely appreciate the analytical side of the game, and that's why I wanted you to come on. So give me 1 second. I'm going to do one little thing right quick, and we're going to jump right into this. Okay. We're going to start at the top. Shout out to you, Tex Bree, everybody that's jumping in the feed as well. All right, let's see. Texas Bread, what's up with you? So let's start from the top, because you said something interesting when you were talking about Jerry Jones. And you were like, you said, I don't know if I quote you right, but you were saying, you know what? Let's not always talk about Jerry in a bad light. Let's remember when he makes some good, good free agency, because this last free agency, they went out and got players that we had always complained about them not getting. Let's lace, the free agent class wasn't good, so let's bring up some Will McClay in this. This can't be all a Jerry thing. You can't just blame him when everything is bad. When he does good things, you never say anything. So kind of expound upon that, and then we'll kind of go from there.
So it's real easy to always point your finger at the guy at the top. He controls the team. So, I mean, I get it. The main point of that was whenever we praise the team, it's Dak Prescott. It's Will McClay. It's a coach, if we wanted to talk about a specific coach. But when it's bad, it's Jerry Jones. And a lot of times that is the case. But at the same time, Jerry Jones, I feel like, has evolved over the last, say, 10 years, where he, I believe, and when we say Jerry Jones, I think need to kind of link Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones kind of in the same breath, because he is in his ear all the time. Stephen Jones has a very large impact on what this team does in both a positive and a negative way. If you look back, again, like 10, 12 years, and look at the contracts that were being given out by Jerry Jones, those aren't happening anymore. We are very much a penny pinching type of organization, way risk averse, I guess you could say. And a lot of that has to do with the influence of a Jason Garrett, of a Stephen Jones, of a Will McClay. So I don't think we can always point our fingers just to one guy. It is a collective group. And if you look at the moves we made this year, a lot of that shows the change in guard to where we don't have a Jason Garrett. We have a Mike McCarthy, who is definitely more hands-off when it comes to bringing in players and selecting players. He didn't really have a major impact on the draft when he was in Green Bay. And we saw that. Will McClay picked his guys, and it seems like they were, home runs so far. My big gripe is whenever you do have a change in coaching staff and a change in scheme, when you are evaluating those players, and not just in the draft, talking about free agency, a lot of times those scouts don't exactly 100% know what type of player you want to bring in, which is one of the reasons why I think we missed so bad in free agency. So we were all excited to see Poe. We were all excited to see Griffin. Worley was kind of a lesser named guy that we thought could maybe be a third or fourth corner or like a tight end specialist. We missed on all those guys. And I think a lot of that is they had a little bit more faith in the coaching staff to be able to make those guys fit, and it just didn't work out. So again, hard for me to blame Jerry completely on just this. But at the same time, like he's a part of the problem.
Yeah. See, now I will. Everything that you were saying, I'm gonna agree with you. With the precipice where you're saying, especially with Jerry backing off and kind of maybe seems like he's delegating more. Mm-hmm. But here's my thing, in my opinion. This is where I go back in the beginning, which is the fundamental. This is why I say, Nick, the fundamental. I don't try to blame him on everything. Really, I'm not that blame guy. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying the fundamental preface. Like I made a tweet and said, since you're the owner, general manager, and the president, as your track record as a general manager in 24 years, you have 14 missed playoff appearances, only 4 playoff wins. So if you're self-evaluating yourself as a GM, you're saying you're failing as a GM. So, but here's the problem. It's never going to get away from it because just like, and I think Jerry just had an interview this past week, he always wants to let everybody know, I run this. I run this. This is my team. Yeah. And I think that is the issue because he always wants to let everybody know I run this. We all know you run this, Jerry. And we've been knowing you running this since you got the Cowboys. You don't have to let all the Cowboys fans know you run this. The problem is because he says he runs this, it's the ego thing. It's the ego. It's kind of like if I created something, Nick, and I had some people with me, right? And I had a person who was very good at a certain thing, but I had the ego and felt like, well, I created this, so I'm going to keep doing this. But a lot of people are giving this other person the credit. But when I step back and look at, does this thing run better when he's kind of doing it? Or am I going to say, no, I got this, I'm going to do it? That's what I'm saying. Because if I step back and say, you know what, my ego is saying I don't like people talking about him, but are we being more productive? Are we doing better? Is this better for us in the long run? So I would have to say, I'm going to have to back up and eat this because it's okay. Because at the end of the day, we all are successful when you do the right things. And I think that's the problem with me, Nick, is that he's not a football guy. I know you play football, Arkansas, and I know and what has entailed Stephen Jones. I'm going to ask you this. What has entailed Stephen Jones? You just grew up in the family, and he just gave you the job. You haven't put in the work, I feel like, as the scouts and anything else to say you're a football guy, and you're the director of player personnel. And I think that's what the issue is, in my opinion. What's your thoughts on that?
So, unfortunately, if we're going to talk about Stephen Jones, I wish we could have someone in between Steven and Jerry, because like I said before, Jerry, he's ego. He wants to be in front of everything. He wants to be the guy that makes the decisions. And then you have Steven, who, like you said, he didn't really rise the ranks. He was born into it. He's not necessarily a football guy. He is approaching it from, I would say, more of a business standpoint. Again, being very risk averse, being very cautious about getting contracts out there, doesn't want to be committed to anything super long-term unless it benefits him and he's considered winning that deal. You need to have someone in between. You need to have someone who knows when to actually go all in and say, hey, we need to bring in a guy because we're on the cusp of winning. We have a 2016 season and we have the number 1 seed. We could do stuff to make our team better. Defensively, we should have made a move. We didn't do anything. And what happened? We lost because we didn't make a move. You know, not saying that those guys necessarily have the right answer of who to bring in, but you got to do something. You know, you look at these teams, all of them are making trades during the trade deal. Look at Tennessee, you know?
Right.
So, but yeah, no, going back to like your original question, it's ego with Jerry. That's his biggest issue. It's knowing when he should listen and when he needs to like take control and do something, you know? So it's tough. Again, I'm not trying to say I'm a fan of Jerry Jones or really defend him. My point is just trying to put a spotlight on what the actual issues are, because there's multiple and not just one. Just saying Jerry sucks doesn't accomplish anything. You know,
that's true.
True, but doesn't accomplish anything.
That's true. But what the hard part is for all of us fans, though, Nick, and media alike, is that we have to deal with it, and we don't know there's nothing we can do. And I think that's the frustrating thing that we all deal with, is that we see all this and there's nothing that we can do. We have to just basically watch all this in front of our faces. Like you said, we see other organizations, the Seattle Seahawks, the Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers. We see organizations that say, the Rams, the Raiders. We see these teams that say, we're not waiting for tomorrow. We trying to win a Super Bowl now. We got to make these things happen. And you don't have to sell the farm to do it. No. You don't have to. You can. We've seen these guys that are top players get dealt for 4th rounders, 3rd rounders, 5th rounders. We've seen it go. And these not are old players. We see young players, and we see Steven sitting there saying, we like who we have. We like the guys we have. And then we spend a 7th round conditional pick on a guy, I'm sorry, who's been on 3 or 4 or 5 teams, and then you see, just like we just talked about, Desmond King go for a 6 to the Titans, who are trying to get a Super Bowl.
And I will say, though, our situation this year is a little different. Normally, when you are in contention, make those moves. Put yourself over the top. But right now, what are we looking at? Potentially winning max 4 games, maybe 5 if somehow there's a miracle. So making a move for a guy like a Desmond King who has 1 year left on his deal, I don't think makes a lot of sense. The only real plus is it might give you a little bit of momentum on D to have some guy that can actually play. And you get semi-first dibs in free agency. But at the same time, I think you can get a guy that could help you out in the offseason. So why even spend a 6th round pick on that? So again, it's kind of a weird situation where they're at this year. They're definitely not buyers. If anything, as we've seen, they're sellers or just sitting put.
Yeah, I can see the angle on that, because it's like, so do you feel like Jerry and Steven are in tank mode and the coaching staff is not?
I think it's hard to say just tank mode, because obviously everyone wants to win, especially the coaches, because we're all judging Mike McCarthy. We're all judging Kellen Moore. We're still judging Nolan, even though he seems to be a lost cause. So he's from that aspect, they have to prove something to keep their jobs. They can't completely tank. They have to have both offense and defense with whatever guys they have to have out there show life. One of the biggest daggers for the Jason Garrett era was the defense giving up on last season. And you can't have that. You can be 8-8, but if your team is giving up, that just shows that you're no longer trusted within the building, and you got to make a move. So from a coaching standpoint, no, they're not giving up, but at the same time, the organization isn't going to make these aggressive moves. We're not going to sign some big name outside free agent, mainly because there's not any there, to help out Terrence Steele. We're not going to sign a big name quarterback. We're just going to throw Gilbert, DiNucci, Dalton, whoever, Cooper Rush, whoever we can out there. Probably going to lose, but hey guys, you got to do your best. You got to compete. So
yeah,
it's not the answer that we all want, but it's kind of a reality to where, like, why would we invest future assets on something that's probably not going to yield a playoff berth?
And see, here's my worry. Here's my worry about this. You see, here's my problem, Nick, is that when we had a football guy like Jimmy Johnson, I'm not trying to go back there. Okay, I'm really not. I don't try to go back there, Nick. I promise I don't. But see, when we're talking about, let's say we don't win another game, because it really looks like we may not win another game.
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule, and Pittsburgh loss, Minnesota probably still a loss, Washington loss, Ravens no-brainer loss, Cincinnati maybe.
But if Joe Burrow gets hot, I know they could beat us.
Again, these are like asterisk maybes, like most likely not. San Francisco, just because of injuries, you might have a chance, but most likely not. Eagles, probably not. Giants, you always have a chance, division, but probably not. Again, there's not a lot of opportunities there.
Right. So let's say, and here's my issue. Everybody's jumping up and talking about picks this and picks that and get this and I don't trust the Joneses. That's what we're talking about, this topic, and we're going to move. I don't trust the Joneses, and here's why I say that, Nick, because there's all kind of scenarios now. We got our top franchise quarterback who we love, who's earned everything he's deserved, but it hasn't got it. Now you're saying you're 2-14. Now you see a Trevor Lawrence. Now you see a Justin Fields. And I don't trust the Joneses to say, I'm going to still sign Dak Prescott to a long-term deal, because I've been hearing Steven Jones saying we need to build everything around Dak. We need to have all the moving parts for Dak. Well, if that's the case, then how do you think that I'm going to think you're going to sign Dak to a $40 million deal when you have this record and you have a cheap quarterback that you can get squeezed out and then build your team around with multiple picks? You get what I'm saying? What's your kind of feelings on that?
Yeah, so that puts the Cowboys in a very interesting spot, and I've always been under the impression that it's a lot harder, even with the no-brain prospects, to find a quarterback in the draft than just to re-sign an established quarterback. And yes, you're paying premium dollar for sure. But now we're asking, okay, we are historically not a great free agency team. And so we're going to draft this quarterback, save money, and now we're going to spend and expect to hit on these free agency guys. Like, either way, like, it's a gamble. And honestly, like, the quarterback's the hardest position to find. So sign the guy, pay him, and then, you use your draft picks. Hopefully you have a top 3 pick and someone's willing to trade up, and then you can get a lot of picks and then fill your team that way. We've been a better drafting team than a free agency team. So I think, again, I can't trust the Joneses, but I would assume
it's hard, Nick.
It's really hard, yeah. It's one of those things where I just got to assume that signing your top 5 debatable, I guess, for some people, quarterback, I don't see why you wouldn't do it. He put the team on his back this year, something that he not necessarily has had to do in the past. And he was the only consistent player on this offense outside of the immortal Zach Martin. That's literally the only person that was consistently elite this year. So I think he checked every box, the way he handled the injury, the way he's, continued to be around the team. Like, you got to.
Hey, yes. Well, hey, appreciate you, Maya Hampton. She says, shout out to my boo thing. My boo thing just had her birthday on Halloween, so shout out to her. If you want to send a donation, you can go ahead and do that as well. Love you, boo thing. Shout out to you. But I just, I mean, that's the issue. Because let's say we don't win another game. You're at 2-14. Sign your quarterback. You're going to know somebody's going to want that top 2 pick because they're going to want a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields. Let that joker mortgage everything they need to do, stack up them picks, sign your QB, and build your defense. Maybe get your offensive tackle because we don't know what's going on with Tyron Smith. But get your defense together. But here's my problem, Nick, and this is my worry. We got to get Mike Nolan out of here. I tried to be gracious to him. We got to get Mike Nolan out of here. We got to get a defensive guy in the building. We don't have one. The last coach, Jason Garrett, was an offensive coach. I like Mike McCarthy, but he's still an offensive guy. We need to get a defensive mind in here. If you're going to get defensive draft picks and you're going to draft, we got to get a defensive mind in here. In saying that, who do you think, if a Mike Nolan is removed, who would you like, or, maybe a name in your head that maybe you'd like to go with?
Honestly, I don't focus a ton on the defensive side as far as coaches go. That's hard for me to really put a name there. Not gonna lie, I was fooled by Mike Nolan. I thought he'd do a lot better than he has. His overall record as a D corner hasn't been great, but he also hasn't had a lot of talent. If you look at where he was at last, he was with the Falcons, not great. When he was with the Ravens, they were good, but he also had a bunch of Hall of Famers there. So it's one of those things where I thought we had the talent, and I think that magnifies both issues. You have a below average coordinator with below average defensive talent. Terrible recipe. You can't have that. So I think even if they do retain Nolan, which actually I think they will, I don't think they'll pull the plug yet. I think with COVID, and I know it's not what we want to hear, but if we know Jerry, we know him and Steven, they stick with people way too long. They give them their fair shot. They'll go with hey, we had a short offseason, no preseason, all these different rules. They'll go with
the excuses.
Yeah. So, and they'll probably roll him out there. But the thing is, I don't think this defense is very far from being good. But I don't think this defense is far from being serviceable with your offense. Right. I think if they could bring in some actual D-tackle talent, it'll make a world difference. It'll make Jalen Smith, who's having an awful year, it'll make him look good. Not great, but it'll make him look good. It'll make Leighton Vander Esch the Leighton Vander Esch of 2018. And you can have that with an okay secondary and survive. And year 2 Trayvon Diggs, which I think will do wonders. So it's one of those things like I don't have a good name for a coordinator that could step in and replace. If anything, it would be an Edwards, who's currently in the building, who also doesn't have a tremendous track record as a D coordinator. But again, I don't think it makes a difference with the talent you have currently on the roster. You're gonna have to make some moves either way.
So I got my guy here, Marquise Games. He says, if the Vikings fire Mike Zimmer, would you want to keep that 4-3, and would you go after Mike Zimmer
as a D coordinator?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm a fan of the 4-3. I like. So in theory, I liked what Nolan said they were going to do: run a lot of multiples. We have the personnel to run 4-3. We have some of the personnel to run a 3-4. So you could really go either direction there. Anyone who can bring the best out of these guys, get rid of that jogging, the confusion. We need a teacher more than anything. Teacher more than a motivator. Anything that can get the best out of those guys, I'll gladly take it.
I think the reason, and here's my thing, Nick, with Mike Nolan. I feel like Rob Marinelli and Chris Richard, when I listen to Chris Richard on his interview with Bobby Belt and Jane Slater, and then I know about Rob Marinelli. Honestly, I feel like they probably knew the talent wasn't that good, or maybe it wasn't that good, but they coached them up. I will say this. I'm going to give them props. They had to coach them up because it completely fell apart when Nolan came in. But here's the thing where I think they coached them up. They brought a lot of love and passion to the players. When I listen to Chris Richard, he's always talking about family and being as one and being close-knit, and Rob Marinelli is that type of coach as well. And I believe when you should know. I mean, I play sports. I don't know if you have, but even in the work facility, if your bosses or employees show you that love, even though they may not be the greatest boss, you will tend to work harder for them because you are getting that. And I feel like once that left and Mike Nolan came with a more business-like approach, I think that's where the disconnect. What do you think about that?
No, I definitely think you need to have your coach match the types of players you have on your roster. We've had over the last couple of years a very young team. And with that comes different difficulties to where some of them need motivation, some of them just need education, because it's a whole different ballgame when you come from college to the pros. And Marinelli's scheme with Richard's kind of secondary passing game coordinating was a good fit for that talent. It was bland. They didn't run a ton, so it wasn't overly complicated. And in my opinion, it made life easy for, I guess, below average quarterback, because you knew exactly what they were going to run, and there wasn't they weren't disguising much, they weren't blitzing much. So I don't think they were the answer either, but I mean, he fit their personality a lot better. Nolan, it seems like the players haven't bought in at all. If you look at the player who's probably from the start of the season performed well, Aldon Smith, he's the only guy who's actually played in the system. So is that a coincidence? Maybe, but I'm willing to think that he has a better idea of what's going on, which is probably why he's shown up from day one compared to everyone else who's maybe starting to show up now,
Well, that's going to be an interesting kind of thing to see how it kind of goes, as the season progresses. Now, let's talk about some of these players, because I seen on your tweet some interesting things. You mentioned Aldon Smith and Randy Gregory.
Yep.
Now, we heard about Seattle was interested in Aldon Smith. Cowboys were like, no. Here's the thing. I've been hearing whispers, I've been talking to some Cowboys insiders that it's not a definite that Aldon Smith is going to sign with the Cowboys.
Yep.
Now, they're pushing that we're not trading him. We'd like to get him long-term, but he's not going full hard as I'm committed to the Cowboys. What would you do in that situation? And then I think you said something about extending Randy Gregory right now while it's low. Kind of tell me about that.
And so, I mean, if I'm Aldon Smith, I'm not committing to the Cowboys either. For one, that's just a bargaining chip that you can use. If you're saying, hey, I'm signing, okay, well, Stephen Jones is going to lowball you, But at the same time, I don't think he'll have a ton of suitors at a really high price. He's played well. He hasn't played exceptional. He should still be in the Cowboys price range. If the intent is to bring him back, don't trade him. Like that makes sense. If you're thinking that the odds of him coming back is bleak, then they made a bad decision. They should have got what they could for him. But I mean, he's a good player. He's a good player. He's versatile. He can play a bunch of different spots on the D. He's not young, but I'd be into a 2-3 year extension.
2-3 year deal. That would be the best for me. But I just feel like Steven's going to lowball him regardless, no matter what.
The other thing to think about, if he does leave in free agency,
we get a comp pick, don't we?
Probably a round or two lower than what you would have gotten in the trade anyway. So it's not a huge difference. It's just going to help you a year later. So I'm not overly – I would like to have him back if he left. I'm not too worried about it. I'm glad that Gregory has another year left on his deal. Allows you to have, a chance. So.
Well, and hopefully they start. Randy Gregory jumped up in snaps. He had 6 snaps his first time, jumped up in 31 snaps his next game. Hopefully he can get a whole lot more because we're going to need him in this Pittsburgh game.
He looked strong.
He played strong.
He looked different.
He looked totally different. And I just think he's just one of them players, much like a Alden Smith, even though Alden Smith has a few more years than him. He's just one of those players that maybe even like a David Irving, that he doesn't have to practice. He's just so damn good. He can just get out of bed and just play because there's just certain type of players like that. And that's what Randy Gregory is. And that's the reason why Jerry never cut him. It ain't just to me about his mental health. It ain't because he was cheap and you got a once in a generation type talent. And that's why you ain't cutting him. It ain't just because you just love Randy Gregory so much. So stop trying to fool everybody, Jerry.
I think because if you're a headache and you're a talent and you're not playing, they're going to get rid of you.
Right.
And if you're constantly having, those type of videos that David Irving was posting and flipping off the camera and
right.
That or whatever he said, that's a no-brainer. I think he genuinely wants to be out there with his teammates, unlike a David Irving. He's just dealing with some shit. And so it's one of those things where, like, you got to root for a guy like that. And then, like you said, add on the fact that he was a top 5 talent that fell to you in the second round. He has the talent to be good. It's another reason why to keep him on. So
yeah. So all right. So let's talk about a little bit of this offense and defense, the offensive line. Let's go with this offensive line. If I had an opportunity to do the offensive line, in my opinion, you go with yours, I'll go with mine. And let's see how we meet.
Okay.
I like Biadasz. I think he's had his ups and downs, but I like the arrows trending up for me. Yeah, and I feel like Joe
solution at center, I think.
He's the long-term solution. Joe Looney's a career backup, so he doesn't need to play, in my opinion. He needs to be a flex guy. Here's my issue. Zach Martin, he ain't trying to play tackle. That's crazy to me because he got that strong of a voice in there that he's saying I ain't doing it. But okay, you playing right guard. Here's the issue I have with this left guard position. I personally felt that Connor McGovern wasn't bad his first 2 games.
He wasn't.
Especially in that Washington game. When I watched that all 22 religiously on him personally, he was moving that front on that Washington front, man. They weren't moving him like they move a Connor Williams. Like he wasn't natural guard. They were not moving him, and he was moving guys out. So I was like, okay, I like that because that's what his grade was when he was at Penn State. He was more of a mauler, a row grader. So why can't we put him at the left guard? You got Cam Irvin, who played serviceably the last few games.
He's been way better than I expected.
Me too. Put Connor Williams, he played tackle, and I know he played left tackle at Texas, but put him at some right tackle. I think Cam Irvin is serviceable at the left tackle. What is the steal thing, big dog?
That one's hard to explain. That one's really hard to explain because he's like Ben DiNucci. He's not ready to be out on the field.
He's not ready.
The thing that throws everything for a loop is all the additional injuries. So Brandon Knight being hurt.
Yes, that hurt. Yeah.
If Brandon Knight's here, Cam Irvin plays the right side, and that's your O-line. Knight just slides back into left tackle, and he's been more than serviceable. He's been really
more
good.
than serviceable.
He's your swing tackle moving forward.
I like Brandon Knight from the very beginning when they picked him up out of free agency. I mean, being an undrafted free agent.
The thing, and this is where it changes a little bit. Connor Williams he's an average starter at best. He is better in the pass game than he is in the run game.
Yes.
Lacks the strength. Connor McGovern, complete opposite. Lacks a little bit of the footwork. Still a young player. Doesn't have a ton of experience, so I expect it to get better. But a lot better in the run game. back when we were having to pass it 40 to 50 times a game, I get why they had Connor Williams there because of that value in the pass protection. Now that you're probably having to run the game closer to 30 times because you have a guy who you don't trust to throw the ball, I have a hard time arguing making a change. The only thing that I really do value is continuity across the O-line. So I do like the fact that you've had, for the most part, consistently of Connor Williams, Biadasz, Zach Martin. Being good to above average up the middle, I think, is key. If you have a quarterback with any type of pocket awareness, you should be able to see how bad Steele is, and you can make it work. We haven't had that, though, with a DiNucci and a Dalton who's seeing his first snaps. So it's tough. And then again, going back to the statement, they're not making a bunch of active moves to try to make this team really good. They're testing players and seeing how they react. So I think at this point, I don't see any major moves on the off, and they'll make any changes if someone gets healthy or if someone gets hurt. So
do you think that's really when Mike McCarthy said this isn't fantasy football and we want continuity? I totally get that with the continuity, but you guys, Terrence Steele's giving up 7 sacks, 28 quarterback pressures. Guys are getting hurt. Guys are getting beat up with him. And here's the thing, like you said, you have to see, in my opinion, where you having Connor McGovern. He was a left guard.
Yeah.
You got to figure out what you're doing with Connor Williams and Connor McGovern, because Connor Williams showed in a very short little bit that he could be a player for you, which gets me to my question is Joe Philbin. Connor McGovern comes in here and plays okay. Why did you not play him? And you're still playing still. And you're a veteran offensive line guy. You didn't play Brandon Knight. You had Brandon Knight at guard. Brandon Knight was playing tackle. You feel me?
Still the weirdest move out of all the weird things that have happened this year. The weirdest move, because he came in last year for Tyron Smith. He played
played very good. He came for Leal and Terrence Smith and Tyron Smith.
And so the fact that they tried to change him to guard was still a bit of a head scratcher, especially when the reports were coming out that Cam Irving was not playing well in training camp. And then they said Terrence Steele. Was like, oh, wait, whatever happened to Brandon Knight? And yeah, no, that's still a weird move. I still question it. I thought maybe that was as a result of Connor McGovern being further behind than they thought. So they needed a good swing guard with also Biadasz being a rookie. You know, they didn't want to throw him there for the first couple of games. But again,
McGovern came in, played in.
His first 2 or 3 snaps were awful. But then he settled in. He was good.
Once he settled in, he looked okay, big dog. So that's why I made a tweet, Nick, that I said it's time for us to talk about some Philbin or McCarthy, because you have McGovern who he did not play bad. You have a guy in Biadasz who, I get it, you were starting Joe Looney because COVID, you want to go with the veteran, but we clearly see that, in my opinion, Biadasz is going to be better than a Looney.
Yep.
You had Brandon Knight over at guard, and we saw how good he was at a tackle at least as the backup. So that's why I'm questioning what's going on with the offensive line coaches.
The only thing that I would be hesitant to do when you were mentioning moving Connor Williams to right tackle is I do think it is a little harder going from the left side to the right side.
Okay.
And making a position change just because the footwork is completely different. You have to do everything backwards. For a Zach Martin just being kicked out to right tackle, for the most part, similar-ish, at least from perspectives. So if, say, Cam Irving got hurt, I bet you right now Connor Williams would be the first one to bump out there. So
let's hope.
It's one of those things where, making a drastic move like that, you might yield the same result, and I don't think they want to do that. It's obvious that they don't want to do that because the best 5, I think, if you're to say, hey, just the best 5, if this was Madden and you just had pure rankings, the best 5 includes Connor McGovern and not Steele.
Yes, it has to.
But it's just hard to do that because they are humans and they do have to actually practice the positions, and it's been a revolving door. So I think they're really trying to do left side versus right side and Biadasz up the middle. So,
So who would you want to start this game at quarterback?
At quarterback, I honestly don't care. I really, it's one of those things where
it don't matter.
No.
Okay, well, hold on. Okay, well, you know what, Nick? Let's forget the quarterback. Let's jump with the running back because, man, you had a back and forth with Tony Pollard. Now, Now, Tony Pollard, he was like, he was only averaging 2 yards a carry. I get it. But when he got some good work in that Philly game, 7 carries, 40 yards. And here's my thing about Ezekiel Elliott. I'm not downing Ezekiel Elliott. I'm not dogging him. But this is what I'm saying. When I look at the top running backs, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, who just got paid, even David Johnson, who went over to the Texans, he's injury prone. But those guys had more in the passing game than Ezekiel Elliott. If I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm not scared of Ezekiel Elliott in the passing game at all. I'm not worried about him. And I think that's where the difference is with those guys, because you can flex a McCarthy out, you can flex Alvin Kamara out, and they can really be a receiver for you and do damage. Ezekiel Elliott doesn't offer that.
Though, to be honest, so that's where, like, I don't think that, even though I do agree with you, he definitely offers a lot more in the passing game. But what have we saw from him? They don't really use him. It's one of those things where it's like, he has the ability, but if you're not going to use him, then give me the better runner. And this year, honestly, I can't defend Zeke. He hasn't been a better runner. Pollard hasn't done anything different. They're both averaging 3.9 yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
Pollard's carries are a little bit more, I don't want to say gimmicky, but they're out on the edge compared to Zeke's, are a lot of more ground and pound. So they're different types of running back. I'm okay with, like, especially now, again, though the season's looking a little negative, I'm okay with 50-50 carries at this point. Before,
right.
I'm 100% going with, hey, give Zeke 80 carries when he's tired, throw in Pollard. But no, I don't see what you have in Pollard. You know, can he run between the tackles? He's shown it at times. Doesn't have the power of Zeke, but he has that breakaway ability where he can break one for, 40, 50 yards if he can find a seam. So I'm not passionate about the running back position anymore. I used to be, but it's one of those things where, like, with this O-line, you're not going to get a consistent running game either way. So
yeah, true.
Keep these guys fresh.
I just my thing is I don't, not even no shade to Zeke. I just want to see one game get Tony Pollard get a 20 carry game. Let's put him some work on him. Let's put something on his back and let's see what he can do. Because I do believe that the more carries he can get and more, because the running back position, you have to get those carries to get in a groove. You know that, Nick. You got to get them carries to get in a groove. When you get a couple carries and you get a couple good runs, then you got to go out and somebody subs for you. And then when you get a play that may not be a good play called by the offensive coordinator, then you get a negative yardage and then you get help taken out the game. That ain't your fault. You called a damn bad play, and my offensive line didn't help me, and so now I'm going to sit out the game for the next quarter, and then I'm cold, and then you expect me to jump back in the game and restart. It's hard, and people don't understand that when they look at Tony Pollard. I don't make no excuses for him, but that's the way the life is as a running back. You need carries to get you in the groove.
And what's tough about that is none of these running backs are really eating. Like, they're playing behind, so they're being forced to throw. Right. I'd have to look at the stats, but the carries have been split even-ish over the last few games to where, like, I would say Zeke getting 60% and Pollard 40%. They're just not running very much. I want to say it might have been the Washington game, maybe the Washington game, but, like, Zeke had 12 carries, Pollard had 9 or 8 or something like that. So it wasn't very off as far as being even. Just they can't run very much just because they're always playing from behind, So that's part of it. And I think if healthy O-line, an offense that wasn't, and part of it's their problem, not turning the ball over a ton, they'd be getting those carries, and Pollard would be having a better year. It's just one of those things where it's kind of ugly right now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens in this Pittsburgh game. We're going against a crazy, tough defense, but you know what? Offensively, they're not great. Pittsburgh is not great offensively. James Conner, he's a good back, but he's not great. He's not somebody I'm super scared about. Then Chase Claypool, he's been having a pretty good rookie year. I like him, but I like to see Diggs go after him. I love that matchup because Diggs, he don't back down. Let me give you some of your thoughts on this defensive front right quick. What do you think about Demarcus Lawrence? I kind of been hard on him. Let me get your thoughts on, what I'm going to tell you. With D-Law, here's my thing. He's one of the highest grade defensive ends this whole season. I get it. But what I said was this. You're getting paid like these other guys like Khalil Mack, the Joey Bozas, all these guys. My thing is sacks ain't the only thing. I get it. You got to have somebody in the run game who's versatile, and I love Demarcus Lawrence because that's what he's always been good at. Even when they drafted him, he was a good run defender. But the 3 sacks you got against was one against a Philadelphia tackle that was a backup, and it wasn't against Lane Johnson. Cam Fleming is not good for the Giants. You should beat him. And then you had a backup offensive tackle because the starting offensive tackle for the Washington football team was out. So you got 3 sacks, which is great, but it's against marginal players.
Yep.
All I'm saying is I need to see you do that against all these top teams. And D-Law said he was a 10-sack guy. So what are your thoughts on D-Law from here and beyond?
Yeah, so I think D-Law has had a lot of criticism, and I think some of it is justified. He did not look healthy at the beginning of the year. If you look at the first, say, probably 5 games compared to these last few, he looked like a completely different dude, just so much more explosive. His knee looks like it's actually feeling healthy. When it comes to sacks, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of people look at pressures as well, he's not able to finish a lot of those sacks. He's close, but not able to complete them. And a little bit of that has to do with his surrounding. I think because overall this defense is as bad as it is, quarterbacks have had no issue whenever they see the pressure, just dump it off. And you'll still get, 8, 12 yards. Right. So I think that is a product. If you look at the guys who are leading in sacks, a lot of them play for good defenses overall, So if you have a defensive or a secondary that can make the quarterback second guess a read or even just hold the ball just a tick longer, we'll be able to get some of these sacks. Same thing with Aldon Smith on the other end. We're not seeing that. We're seeing easy reads, soft coverages, 3-step drop, balls out. You can't get a lot of sacks that way. That Jared Goff game, week 1, no one was going to get a sack really in that game outside of just when we actually had to force him to throw. Everything else was just play action dump, quick pass, So I think he's playing better than, say, his sack total is showing. But he hasn't been that player all year. He's just now getting good. If he keeps consistently, I'm 100% saying that he's back.
Yeah. And you know what? It does look like he has gotten healthy. I've noticed the last 2 weeks it looks like that knee because he had a knee issue because I was watching him in that Cleveland game in particular. He was really hobbling in that game, and I noticed a difference in these last few. So hopefully he is getting healthy. I went on a tangent. I went on a rant, went hard on him. Everybody was going on, talking, laughing at me. But it's just the fact that I do think D-Law is good. I've never questioned that D-Law isn't good. But I just want – I can't say I want more. I want you to be dominant like all the time because you said that. So I want the domination from that because if you look at the defense as a whole, you're one of the top players on the defense. So that's the reason why. But I get it. Double team, triple teams, it happens.
I'll add one more thing real quick.
Okay.
A lot of people want to focus on his contract, and this is something that I've tweeted a couple times, saying, hey, he's one of the top paid defensive ends in the league. He needs to be having sacks like the Joey Bosa's, the Myles Garrett's, all this stuff. Although true on surface level, if you actually dive into his contract, they show very different stories. If you look at like how much money each organization is actually committed to those players, the Cowboys have an out after 3 years. And during those 3 years, he's averaging some, I forgot, it was like 16, 17 million, which is still a lot, but it's not even close to what like the Bosa's and the Myles Garrett's are averaging. So they paid him top dollar on surface level, but the commitment and basically what they're giving him guaranteed tells you a different story. So just something to keep in mind.
See, I like that. That's a good point. And also because I know that out is like in next year, he has an out for next year that they can get rid of him. Isn't it after 2021?
It's 2022. I'd have to check.
Is it 2022? Because I know him and Ezekiel Elliott, they have them close outs where they're not too many years past. And I think it's right when D-Law gets about 30 is when they have that out where they can revisit that contract. And I said in my heart that this was going to be his last contract. Not hating on D-Law, but I just know how Steven operates. And I just feel like he would just try to lowball again. And he's going to look at that sack total. And he's like, you ain't doing what them other guys is doing. So I'm going to lowball you. And I know you could probably get some. That I just feel like that's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that.
So let's talk about these linebackers. I don't want to talk about defensive tackles because it's atrocious. So I don't even talk about them guys. Let's talk about these linebackers. We mentioned Jalen Smith. What's your opinion of Jalen Smith? What should they do with this contract? Is it just you just got to eat it and that's just what it is? What's your thoughts on this?
He looks lost out there. He looks like he's second guessing what he's supposed to be doing, which I think translates into him looking like he's loafing, and sometimes he is loafing. He's a businessman. I keep describing him as a businessman because it looks like he's making business decisions out there. He's looking for, and I mean, he had an atrocious injury, and that's scary as hell. But like, it looks like he's still thinking about it. When you have a linebacker, you got to have a guy that can stick his nose in there, And I do see, and I think LVE has struggled at times, but he looks like he's willing to do it. Not always in the right spot, but at least he's willing. And Jalen Smith looks like he doesn't want any part of contact, and that scares me for a linebacker. So
you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I never thought about it in that aspect. Now, I was always saying that, he was doing some business decisions, but not in that aspect. Now, I had been talking about how he was always protecting that leg. Like, he won't get up in that trash because sometimes when you get super physical up there, you might get bent backwards. It's almost like I don't want to mess this leg up because I want to lose what I have. Because I already had a devastating injury. I can't lose this. This is my income. And because so many times, just like you said, Sean Lee, when he came in the game, he only played 6 snaps, but he had a play where I think Jalen Smith went out. He was up in the middle. He engaged in the blocker, shed him, and made the tackle.
Yeah.
That's what we don't see Jalen Smith do. He does not come in there in the trash, come up in the defender, shed him, and make the tackle. Too many times he's getting peeled off, he's backing up, and you can see him hobbling on that leg like he's not trying to put the pressure on it, and he's always trying to evade the contact. He's always trying to move away from the contact.
He absorbs the contact more than anything.
Right.
I don't even think he tries to avoid it. He hands on the defender and pushes himself back almost.
Right. It's like it's like he doesn't want to get any part of that, and it's frustrating because you have a guy you paid this much money and he is your cornerstone of the future by the way you paid him, and it's not working. And even like you said, LVE, who is brittle, he will go up in there, he will put his face up in there, he will try to make but it's just a problem right now.
And when you said LVE is brittle, like, I don't disagree with that, but it's a high contact position. That's also why I don't want to invest a ton in linebackers, because those guys get hurt all the time. I don't want to spend another first-round pick on a linebacker. Give me a guy like a Hitchens in a fourth-round pick. You can groom those guys and be good linebackers. They don't have to be great. Invest in the D-line. You can't have crappy D tackles if you're going to have, mid linebackers, but those linebackers are going to get hurt. I mean, Sean Lee, yes, he's injury prone, but he's also out there working his ass off, taking on every hit, like you said. It's going to happen, So it's one of the things where, like, I'd have to look at his contract because I can't remember what it looks like. I know I hate it. I defended him for a long time as far as, like, I thought a position change would be very helpful for him. He's not a middle linebacker, but it hasn't done much, honestly. So he's a straightforward guy. If there's a hole there and it's clear that that's the hole he needs to go, maybe. But even that, this year, he hasn't even shown to be able to do that. So it's really bad. Like, if you watch the tape, simple plays of misdirection, things that you should not be fooled on as a linebacker. And this is time and week out. And the people who don't watch the tape, he's leading the league in tackles, so he's doing good. Yeah, but when you're getting all them tackles after the line of scrimmage because you are not meeting these players in the hole, or you're not getting negative plays. When was the last time you seen Jalen Smith hit a running back behind the line of scrimmage? Giants? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm trying to think. He had one. I remember a swipe. I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I haven't seen that in a while."
It was the Giants because you know why? Because it was the Giants. He was playing against Jason Garrett, and he knew that offensive scheme. That's exactly it. Because if you look at his stats per Pro Football Focus, that's his best game he had all year. He was attacking the line of scrimmage, getting guys, because you know that offense, dog. These other guys, these other teams, they killing you all day, big dog. Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but they got to figure it out. Let's talk about the back end. We know it's been bad, but who would you like to keep? We already know about Trevon Diggs. We like Trevon Diggs, right?
Trevon Diggs is awesome. Yep.
Okay.
He's a good young talent. Hasn't been perfect, but love what he's done.
But we look at he's a rookie, and that's one of the hardest positions to come into the NFL.
And he's been CB1 for this team.
Exactly. So who would you let's just look at the cornerbacks besides Diggs. Who would you want to bring back?
So right now we have Anthony Brown under contract. He's serviceable. He's fine. I don't want him to be CB2 like he has been. Jordan Lewis, probably not, unless we plan on running a lot more zone, or maybe they decide to make him like a hybrid safety. He's great when he has his eyes on the quarterback and can actually read and react. Just a little too slow for man coverage. So, not really care. I would be interested in a small Cheeto extension. But at the same time, that doesn't prevent me from drafting a cornerback high. If one of those top guys are there at the top of the draft, sorry, man, like you're just down the depth chart. So neither of those two guys, like I want to necessarily have starters, but they can be. And then safeties, Donovan Wilson. I guess that's the only person I really see a lot of promise in. Xavier Woods, I think he just needs a
Xavier Woods needs to go. He needs to go.
Yeah. Who?
Xavier Woods needs to go.
Yeah, I think he was a fine player. We all liked him in the old scheme. This is just not working out. And he needs a fresh start somewhere else. He'll probably end up being a pretty decent player and probably play for a long time. But he's just a guy at this point. Yeah. He's not going to prevent. I think if the Cowboys actually decide to spend money in free agency, 2 safeties would be something I would highly invest in. Combine those 2 safeties with Donovan Wilson, I think you got something there. Don't even have to be elite guys, just some mid-range guys. Just can't be bargain hunting. So
yeah, I think this is a season. If you're going to show somebody something, Stephen Jones, go out, even if it's in free agency, go and sign a young safety and spend money on him. You know what I mean? Like that's the time. And if you keep on bargain hunting like this and thinking that you can get along, this should be the season right here that should tell you, the Joneses, that bargain hunting didn't work. I mean, and nobody's saying you can't build your team around free agency. We understand that, but you still have to draft better too. This draft class last year was pretty good, but if we look at the classes in the previous years, besides 2016, there haven't been really a lot of good drafts. What do you think?
I mean, no, they haven't been. And also, like you said, this last draft class looks really good, but you're still counting on because you decided to sign a 30-something-year-old McCoy who they weren't confident enough to just give him a straight contract. They had a injury settlement written in there, or injury clause written in there, to where, like, okay, there's some doubt there that he played. Outside of him, you had a 2nd-round pick who was inactive most of the year last year, and a 3rd-round pick who's never played a snap in the NFL. So if you're going to have a good draft, I guess you have to expect those guys to contribute right away. I'm sorry, but like a 2nd and 3rd-round pick, those guys aren't layups always. So I still would rather them, be more aggressive as far as bringing in an actual starting caliber D-tackle, starting caliber safety, and let the young guys continue to work and get spot snaps. But I'm not going to depend on them starting right away. Absolutely not.
No, so. And like I said, if you're going 2nd, 3rd, and 4th runners, you got to get a guy that you get in free agency that you know is a young or mid-age starter that's coming in and who already's been there and done that, and then you can get the draft picks, because those aren't guarantees. You get what I'm saying? We know this, Nick. You can have 15 draft picks, but if you have to draft well. You have to hit on these guys. So you have to get at least a couple key free agents to kind of soften any kind of blow, just in case you may have dropped the ball in the draft. At least you have some solid young guys who may have production prior when you add them on the team. So we'll see how that goes kind of as a whole. But let's talk about this Pittsburgh matchup before we get up out of here. What's your kind of thoughts of what do you think? I know Pittsburgh 7-0, but to me, it's a deceiving 7-0. It's a deceiving 7-0. They're not a dominant team by any means. They can be beat. Obviously, we don't have the parts, to come in and just say we want to do, but it could be an upset. What would be your keys for the Dallas Cowboys upset against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
That's going to take a lot. Honestly, a collapse by Ben Roethlisberger. He's going to have
to play like a Carson Wentz type game.
He's going to have a Carson Wentz type game, something that keeps his team in. Because the offense, maybe they have a couple like big time plays that like get them 6 points, something like that. But like they're not going to move up and down the field. I don't care who's at quarterback until Dalton comes back. Like even he's not going to be great, but like Gilbert's not going to do anything. DiNucci's not going to do anything. Cooper Rush isn't really going to do anything. So it's going to be them shooting themselves in the foot rather than the Cowboys really doing anything. The big thing I'm looking for with all of these matchups moving forward is where can we see some positives? Are we getting any momentum on defense?
Right.
Are these players buying into the system? Again, that's going to be huge. If we keep seeing these unnamed sources criticizing the coaches and stuff, that might say an even more end to the Nolan era, which was short already. But if they can build off of this Philly game, okay, that's good. We'll probably still lose, but I want to have some momentum on D going into next year. Yes. Offense, without a quarterback, it's hard to do much. I feel bad for these receivers because I know there's going to be frustration by the end of the year because they're just not going to get the ball. But I'd like to see them continue to compete. I did not like these drops the last couple of weeks from, I guess that was last week, from Lamb. Literally my only criticism because he's been phenomenal outside of that. But hey, if the game's going to be ugly, I still need you to be locked in. Again, only criticism, phenomenal player, going to be our wide receiver number one.
Michael Gallup too. Because Gallup is a dog, but he had a big drop in that Cardinals game where we could have had a touchdown. And he had a drop in the last game as well. I mean, I love Gallup, but sometimes he'll make the great acrobatic catch and miss the real easy ones because of lack of concentration. So I'm gonna need that because the opportunities are gonna be far and few for you receivers. So when you do get it, you got to make the most of your opportunities because you're gonna be dealing with a quarterback who probably is nothing close to a Dak Prescott. So you guys are gonna have to help your quarterback and catch the ball. You know what I mean?
I want to see these guys being locked in. That's it. You know, showing effort, locked in. There were times where we see guys that are, loafing around the field. They don't look like they're engaged. Well, that's not going to cut it, and that's not something that you can just turn on when the lights turn back on next year. So I want them to be doing that now. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough when it's as ugly as it's going to be, but that's the one thing I'm really looking for.
And see, that's one of the reasons why, Nick, I want Connor McGovern to play because he's going to get to good defensive front. This is the perfect time for you to evaluate. Let's keep it real. This season is lost. They're not going anywhere. They can keep on trying to talk in the media that we still have a chance in NFC East. No, you don't. Even if you win the NFC East, that playoffs, anything can happen, but let's keep it all the way real. Do we really think that the Cowboys are going to go on some kind of miraculous run like the New York Giants did and go to the Super Bowl? No, we don't think that. Okay?
And real quick, while you're talking about line, I want to add something too, because I do think if the Cowboys still had Dak Prescott, say they won a couple games, and we are leading the NFC East, and they're looking at potentially making a run, I do think they'd make more changes on the offensive line. Because, like you said, I think right tackle, Steele's a liability. I think they would have eventually been able to convince Zach Martin to move out. If Zach Martin's working on the right tackle with Dak Prescott, I think they're willing to do that. Then you slide in a Connor McGovern. So I think the fact that you don't have that guy, we're going to keep him in that position. That's where he's always been. That's where he makes his paychecks. We're just going to leave it as is. So, again, I just want to throw that in there. I think if they were under different circumstances, they would be more aggressive with those moves. I don't know for sure. That's just what my gut feeling tells me.
You know what? I'm gonna kind of flex with you on that one. Especially with the situation with right tackle with Zach Martin. I think he is bulking. You got these other guys in there, but he had Dak Prescott in there, and he slid his ass right on out there. And I think, that I would say that definitely has a bigger thing because guess what? I'm gonna play right tackle with Andy Dalton and Ben DiNucci and these guys now. We have a Dak Prescott who he feels like the season. We felt like we still had a chance even when Dallas was playing bad with Dak Prescott. He still gave us a chance. We still would have been competing for this NFC East if Dak Prescott was still here. We probably would have smashed them we would have smashed them damn Eagles if we had a Dak Prescott. You feel me?
Because we beat the Eagles in my opinion.
Yeah.
It took minor quarterback play and so
So we'll kind of see how this goes. It's going to be interesting the rest of the season. I want to just see, like you said, I want to see guys competing, especially on this defensive side, so you can really get an evaluation of who you're going to keep because there's a lot of unrestricted free agents on the team, and they need to build. And we know the defensive tackle has got to be addressed in free agency or in the draft, especially in my opinion, free agency, because I want to have a veteran. I love to have a dog. But you don't know as a rookie. You don't know. I want to have somebody, and I felt like it hurts my soul that Gerald McCoy got hurt because I wasn't excited about the Poe signing. I was cool with it because you had a big boy in the middle. You get what I'm saying? I wanted Snacks Harrison. I was all on that train, but I was like, okay, I'll take a Poe. He's okay. Yeah. But McCoy was my huge signing because of the leadership that he brought. I know he was going to bring it 100%. I knew there was never going to be a slack or lacking. And I think him beside a Demarcus Lawrence would have made it easier for the Demarcus Lawrence this season as well, because you have a tough defensive tackle who's averaged 5 sacks a game since like 2014. You know what I mean? It makes a Demarcus Lawrence better. So I think maybe his play suffered as well when you had a Poe next to you, or Tyrone Crawford, who's not that guy.
I've been disappointed with Crawford. I know
that's what I was just about to say. Tyrone Crawford.
I know he had 2 hip surgeries. I still figured he looked like he was in great shape. I thought he'd come back to be somewhat the same. Not even. I tweeted something about last week's game. I confused him with Antoine Woods. That's how slow he was moving. Antoine Woods is 40 pounds heavier than him. Judge, I'm not for sure, but he's a lot bigger than him. So it's one of those things where, like, that's kind of embarrassing for Tyrone Crawford. He needs to be quicker if he's going to be playing on the inside. And he's been historically Demarcus Lawrence's best friend as far as running games with, and it hasn't helped. So it's been
that's another free agent thing, though. That's another front office thing where they said, you know what? And I heard that Tyrone Crawford's agent them approached the Cowboys first and they said, hey, we'll go with a pay cut because we don't want to get cut. And the Cowboys were like, we're good. And y'all just let them stay at that.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the full conversation was looking like. I'm wondering if he wanted a pay cut for this year with an extended year into next year. And the Cowboys were like, nah, let's just keep it as is. So then we're moving on next year. Right. I don't know what the discussions were. I could see something like that. And if that's the case, then it was the right move. I don't want him around next year the way he's playing right now. And I've been a big Tyrone Crawford fan. I think he's been, for the most part of his career, underrated.
Mm-hmm.
Never really lived up to his contract. He's still a very good role player and opened up a lot of things for others. But at this point, no, he's a shell of what that was once. So
I totally agree with you. I never hated on Tyrone Crawford. He would remember when he first came out. I remember when he was on NFL.com, the up and coming under 25. When he got that contract up in the middle, when he was a 3-tech, and he was a damn good solid 3-tech. In the very beginning. And even this year, I was like, I didn't want him, but I said, well, you got McCoy, you got Poe, that'll help him. You got all these other guys, maybe that'll help him. But he's a total shell of himself. This needs to be Tyrone Crawford's last year. I appreciate everything he did for the Cowboys because he was a rock with us. But this needs to be the last year. And it just frustrates me that you probably could have saved that money this year, knowing that he had already come off hip surgery and didn't play all last year. You got too emotionally attached with him, and Cowboys front office does that. They get too emotionally attached with players, and they keep them for too long.
Which is good and bad.
Exactly. You keep them too long, and then when you're like, okay, let's get rid of them, now you're not getting no value from him because there's no trade value. This is a business, and y'all Joneses know that. So stop being in love with all these players. If you're so in love with players, then why didn't you sign Dak Prescott, damn it?
Yep.
You feel me? If you're so in love with players, you should be in love with some Dak Prescott because he done held it down for y'all and he did everything the right way for you. You talk about the right kind of guys. Byron Jones is the right type of guy for you, but you decided to let him walk because he wasn't popular. You talking about Dak Prescott, this and that. I don't want to hear the talk about Dak Prescott. Signing is the talk for me. Signing that dotted line and giving him an extension, because here's the thing, Nick. We should be talking about building the team with defensive players, and your franchise quarterback has had his contract and settled. But no, what are we going to be talking about? Is Dak Prescott going to be signed? Is this Dak Prescott's last year? Once again, it's another distraction in the Joneses, and that's why I say, Nick, the Joneses do the silly things because they're causing another distraction instead of us concentrating on other things to build the team.
Dak Prescott contract situation, Demarcus Lawrence contract situation, Zeke Elliott contract situation. All these things are distractions for the team that are easily avoidable. When you're nickel and diming these players, sometimes it's honestly better for the team to just say, hey, okay, no, we'll give you a couple extra bucks just to get the contract done so it doesn't drag out into the training camp and into the offseason, that type of things. And they don't have a good feel for that. So that's probably the most frustrating thing I have with Steven and Jerry.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't feel like it's ever going to change because it hasn't changed from this point. So the biggest thing that I can just say, Nick, from here and beyond, is that hopefully the coach and the players, just like it was back when Barry Switzer won that Super Bowl in '95, I felt like it was the players just overcoming everything else because they were just so damn good and they won it.
Yeah.
That's what's going to really have to happen because it's not going to be the management, in my opinion, that's really going to do it. It's the guys that they get in front of them and that are really just going to have to really overcome that management because those guys are never going to get out the way of what you really should do as far as letting football people run it the way they want.
Yeah. And I will say, though, like Jason Garrett, again, I think he did some good things for this organization. I don't think he's a great coach. But I also think that his influence on specifically the draft and also free agency, that was pushed up to management. And so I think we already saw a part of that with the draft. And so if we can continue on that path with McCarthy having certain, aspects that he wants to, chime in on, but allowing McClay to just bring in those guys, like I think that could be a winning recipe, but there's obviously hurdles, but you can win with a really good coach and really good scouting. You can make it happen.
Well, let's hope and see. I just want to see our young guys, hopefully Reggie Robinson can get on the field this year. I would love to see all the 2019 draft get on the field. 2020, I like to see both of these guys as much as they can so you can get a solid evaluation heading into next year. But dog, I really appreciate it. We had a really good crowd in the feed, man. Really love the knowledge that you brought to the table. I think you really should think about doing a podcast later on. You got a really good knowledge, good voice. I think you should really think about doing that later on down the line for you, dog, because I think you have a lot to offer. But I know you don't have any podcasts or anything like that, but people who want to follow you on Twitter, man, since you was on here, man, let everybody know how they can follow you and a little bit of the background before we get off of here.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Nick_Herrera34. And yeah, not always serious. I say a lot of stupid shit on there, but most of it is themed. It's fun. It's fun. So always engaging with people. So if you have any questions, reach out to me, guys.
Yeah, and like I'm trying to tell you, please go follow him. Nick started following me on Twitter, and then I just kept on looking at your feeds and looking how you were talking. I'm telling you, man, this guy has a lot of knowledge, a lot of good information, and that's I mean, I'm gonna keep it real, dog. And I ain't saying I'm nobody. I'm not really coming out like that, but I just don't hit people up and say, "Go jump on my, on my show." So that just tells you how much I really respected your knowledge and really respected what you brought to the table. Because I think you really bring a lot of heat. So, man, just keep up that good work, dog. And I want to tell you once again, appreciate you. So for me, Nick Herrera, Big Game James, Silver and Blue Nation, appreciate everybody in the feed that was here. Shout out to you, Molly. I haven't seen you in a long time. Appreciate you pumping up everybody that was in here. Love everybody. Love all you guys. Tonight we'll have Mike White, not to be trite, Burgers and Blitzes. Tonight we'll talk more Cowboys football and we'll get it in. So for me, to Nick, to Silver and Blue Nation, Big Game James, salutes to you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Stay on here, Nick, before you leave, and we're going to talk right quick and talk to you guys soon. Big Game James, I'm out. Peace.